When you think about Harry Styles today, you see one of the biggest cultural figures on the planet, a solo artist breaking streaming records, a style icon redefining gender norms in fashion, an actor landing roles in Oscar-nominated films, and a Grammy-winning superstar with stadiums full of fans hanging on his every word. But to understand how Harry became Harry Styles, we need to go back to a moment that feels almost accidental, one audition on a British reality show in 2010 that changed the course of music history. At just 16 years old, Harry Edward Styles was living in Holmes Chapel, a small town in Cheshire, England. He was known locally as the kid who loved to sing, fronting a small band called White Eskimo. For Harry, music was more than a hobby, it was a lifeline. He worked part-time at a bakery, making ends meet, but his dream was much bigger than bread rolls and cash registers. That dream took him to the X Factor UK stage in the summer of 2010, where he nervously auditioned in front of Simon Cowell, Louis Walsh, and Nicole Scherzinger. Harry's audition was raw, unpolished, but full of potential. Singing Stevie Wonder's "Isn't She Lovely," he had a shy charm that instantly captured attention. He didn't blow the judges away in a powerhouse sense, but there was something magnetic about him, the messy curls, the cheeky grin, the unforced charisma. He was the kind of performer who made you want to root for him. And that was the moment where everything began. Initially, Harry didn't make it as a solo act. In fact, he and several other boys were on the brink of elimination. But fate, and Simon Cowell's sharp instincts, had different plans. Cowell, along with guest judge Nicole Scherzinger, suggested putting 5 of the eliminated boys together as a group. The names? Harry Styles, Niall Horan, Liam Payne, Louis Tomlinson, and Zayn Malik. They became One Direction, and though it was a gamble, it turned out to be one of the most successful decisions in modern pop history. From the beginning, Harry stood out. Each member of One Direction brought something different. Niall was the playful charmer, Liam the dependable lead, Louis the cheeky one, Zayn the mysterious heartthrob. But Harry had a certain balance, approachable yet enigmatic, boyish yet soulful. When they performed together, cameras often lingered on him, and fans took notice. He wasn't just another boy in a boy band, he was the face of One Direction. The group quickly developed a rabid fan base. By the end of the X Factor season, even though they didn't win the competition, they had already won something bigger, a contract with Simon Cowell's Psycho Music and the undying devotion of millions of teenage fans around the world. Social media amplified their reach, with Twitter and Tumblr fueling an entirely new kind of fandom hysteria. Harry became a household name almost overnight. Their first single, What Makes You Beautiful, dropped in 2011 and exploded onto the charts. The song was pure teen pop perfection, and the video, with Harry leading the group down a sunny beach, curls bouncing as he sang into the camera, cemented his image as the group's unofficial frontman. The track wasn't just a hit, it became a generational anthem. Suddenly, One Direction wasn't just another boy band. They were the boy band. For the next 5 years, One Direction dominated the world. Albums like Up All Night, Take Me Home, Midnight Memories, and 4 didn't just sell well, they smashed records. They sold out arenas and stadiums across continents, creating scenes of Beatlemania-level chaos wherever they went. Fans camped outside hotels, flooded airports, and filled Twitter with trending hashtags daily. Harry, meanwhile, leaned into his role as the heartthrob, though he never seemed to take himself too seriously. Unlike some stars who resisted the label, he embraced the madness with humor and humility. He waved at screaming fans, cracked jokes in interviews, and never gave off the sense that fame had gone to his head. Yet, beneath the smiles and cheeky interviews, Harry also began to show signs of wanting more. While the tabloids obsessed over his dating life, linking him to Taylor Swift, Kendall Jenner, and more, Harry quietly studied music beyond the bubblegum pop of One Direction. His personal inspirations were rock and folk legends, from Fleetwood Mac to David Bowie, and you could see flickers of that influence even in those early days. Still, at this point, he was locked into the whirlwind of being 1/5 of the biggest boy band in the world. For millions of young fans, Harry Styles wasn't just a singer, He was the soundtrack to their teenage years, the poster on their bedroom walls, the reason they screamed until they cried at concerts. He became a fashion trendsetter, too, with his skinny jeans, casual blazers, and trademark hair inspiring countless imitators. By 2015, One Direction had reached a crossroads. Zayn Malik left the group, shocking fans worldwide. Suddenly, the future of One Direction seemed uncertain, and for the first time, the possibility of Harry's solo career became a real question. Could he step out of the band's shadow and prove himself as more than just another boyband graduate? At that moment, no one could have predicted the heights he would go on to reach. But what was clear from those early X Factor days through the One Direction explosion was this: Harry Styles had something different. Charisma that couldn't be taught. A spark that went beyond catchy pop hooks. He was more than a teen idol, he was a star in the making. Looking back now, it's remarkable to think that one audition on a summer day in 2010, with a nervous teenager singing Stevie Wonder, would snowball into one of the most successful music careers of the modern era. That was the beginning of Harry Styles' story. The boy from Holmes Chapel had officially taken his first step toward becoming a global icon. By 2015, Harry Styles had spent 5 years living inside a bubble that only a select few people on Earth could understand, the bubble of One Direction. Endless touring, chart-topping albums, tabloid frenzy, and the constant presence of cameras had become his reality. But with Zayn Malik's departure earlier that year, cracks began to show. The band pressed forward as a foursome, releasing Made in the AM to huge success, but behind the scenes, a new question loomed: was this the beginning of the end? For Harry, the timing couldn't have been more critical. He had grown, not just as a person, but as an artist. While One Direction sound had matured from bubblegum pop to slightly edgier pop rock, Harry's personal tastes were pulling him in another direction entirely. His inspirations weren't boy band predecessors, they were legends. David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Freddie Mercury, Fleetwood Mac. He wanted to craft music with soul, grit, and timelessness. The kind of songs that weren't just summer anthems, but classics that could live for decades. So when One Direction officially announced their hiatus in early 2016, fans were heartbroken, but Harry saw it as an opportunity. This was his chance to prove himself, to step out from behind the One Direction brand and show the world who he really was. The first step was reinvention. Harry signed with Columbia Records as a solo artist, the same label behind Adele. He also made a bold career move, parting ways with Modest Management, who had handled One Direction, and instead aligning himself with Jeff Azoff of Full Stop Management, a strategic shift that signaled he was playing the long game. Harry wasn't just going to rush out a solo album to cash in on the boy band fame. He was going to take his time and create something meaningful. And he did exactly that. In May 2017, Harry released his debut self-titled album, Harry Styles. From the opening track, Meet Me in the Hallway, it was clear this was no boy band record. Instead of sugary pop hooks, listeners were met with moody guitars, emotional vulnerability, and a haunting soundscape. The breakout single, Sign of the Times, stunned critics and fans alike. At nearly 6 minutes long, with soaring falsettos and a rock ballad structure, it sounded nothing like One Direction, and everything like the music Harry had always wanted to make. Sign of the Times became a statement. It was Harry telling the world, I am not just a boy band star. I am an artist. The song climbed charts globally, critics praised its ambition, and Rolling Stone even hailed it as a bold, Bowie-esque debut. For a generation of fans who had grown up with Harry, the song's dramatic tone matched the moment. They weren't kids anymore, and neither was he. But music wasn't the only way Harry reinvented himself. Fashion became an equally important tool in his transformation. Gone were the skinny jeans and casual blazers of his One Direction days. In their place came bold prints, flared trousers, sequin jumpsuits, and the beginnings of his now famous gender-fluid style. Partnering with Gucci, Harry embraced flamboyance and theatricality in his wardrobe, paying homage to his rock idols while simultaneously carving out his own lane. His looks weren't just fashion, they were statements. The world took notice. critics who once dismissed him as just another manufactured teen idol began writing about him with respect. His fan base expanded too. While he kept the loyalty of millions of Directioners, he was also attracting new audiences, older listeners, music critics, and industry veterans who respected the risks he was taking. To cement his new era, Harry launched a solo world tour in 2017. Instead of stadiums, he chose smaller venues at first, intimate theaters where fans could experience his music up close. It was a deliberate choice, signaling that this wasn't about spectacle or manufactured pop, it was about artistry, connection, and building credibility from the ground up. And it worked. The show sold out instantly, with fans screaming every lyric. On stage, Harry was magnetic, playful, witty, and entirely at ease. He didn't just sing, he performed with the confidence of someone who had found his voice. Critics praised his live presence, comparing him to legends like Jagger. But perhaps the biggest shift came in how Harry carried himself. Unlike many ex-boy band members who seemed desperate to shed their past, Harry embraced his One Direction roots while simultaneously transcending them. He spoke fondly of his time in the group, never belittling it, but always making it clear that his solo career was an evolution. That balance earned him something rare in the industry: respect without resentment. By the time the Harry Styles album cycle ended, there was no doubt left. Harry had successfully broken free from the boyband box. He was no longer just the curly-haired one from One Direction. He was Harry Styles, a solo artist with a vision, a voice, and the charisma to carry it all. And yet, this was only the beginning. Behind the scenes, Harry was already planning his next move, one that would not only solidify his place in music but turn him into a cultural phenomenon. By 2019, Harry Styles had already surprised the world. His self-titled debut had shattered expectations, proving he could stand on his own as a credible solo artist. But while his first record established him as more than just a boy band graduate, his second album would transform him into something much bigger, a cultural icon. The album was Fine Line, released in December 2019. Leading up to it, fans speculated about the direction Harry would take. His debut leaned heavily into classic rock influences, but Harry was evolving, both musically and personally. He was more confident, more playful, and unafraid to push boundaries. With Fine Line, he fused rock, pop, funk, and folk into a kaleidoscope of sound that felt both nostalgic and completely new. The first single, Lights Up, arrived in October 2019 and set the tone. Dreamy, sensual, and mysterious, it was accompanied by a video that sparked endless discussion about identity, sexuality, and freedom. The lyrics, "Do you know who you are?" weren't just a hook, they were a manifesto. Harry wasn't giving the world easy answers. Instead, he was inviting listeners to join him in self-discovery. Then came Watermelon Sugar. Infectious, summery, and irresistibly joyful, the track became one of the biggest hits of his career. By 2020, it dominated radio and playlists, eventually winning a Grammy for Best Pop Solo Performance. For Harry, the success of Watermelon Sugar wasn't just about streams and awards. It marked his arrival as a global pop superstar, the kind whose songs didn't just chart but defined cultural moments. But Fine Line was more than its singles. Tracks like Adore You showcased his knack for crafting uplifting pop anthems with depth, while ballads like Falling stripped him bare, revealing his vulnerability in a way One Direction never allowed. And then there was the title track, Fine Line, a sprawling, emotional closer that felt like a thesis statement for the album. It was Harry at his most ambitious, proving that his artistry wasn't confined to radio-friendly hits but extended to expansive, soul-stirring pieces of music. Critics responded with enthusiasm. Fine Line was hailed as bold, mature, and refreshingly authentic. Rolling Stone called it a sweet and tender ode to breakups, happiness, and self-discovery, while The Guardian praised Harry for embracing experimentation. Commercially, it soared, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200 and eventually going multi-platinum. Harry had not only avoided the dreaded sophomore slump, he had delivered a career-defining record. But it wasn't just the music that made Fine Line an era. It was everything around it, the visuals, the fashion, the performances, the cultural moments that turned Harry Styles from a pop star into a symbol. Fashion, in particular, became central to his transformation. Partnering closely with Gucci and stylist Harry Lambert, Harry pushed boundaries with gender-fluid looks. The Fine Line promotional era saw him in sheer blouses, sequins, pearls, and tailored suits in pastel shades. He blurred the lines between masculine and feminine aesthetics, refusing to be boxed into one identity. The culmination of this came in December 2020, when Harry appeared on the cover of Vogue in a Gucci dress, the first solo male to ever grace the magazine's cover. The image sparked headlines worldwide, igniting debates about gender norms in fashion, but more importantly, it cemented Harry as a cultural trailblazer. He wasn't just wearing clothes, he was making statements. And yet, through it all, Harry remained remarkably grounded. His interviews revealed a man who didn't over-explain his choices, preferring instead to let his art and style speak for themselves. Asked about his fashion and sexuality, he often emphasized freedom and authenticity rather than labels. This quiet confidence only made him more magnetic. Fans didn't just admire his music, they admired him for embodying the idea that you could live authentically, joyfully, and unapologetically. Touring amplified this even further. The Love on Tour shows became more than concerts, they were cultural events. Stadiums filled with fans dressed in boars, sequins, and pastel suits, mirroring Harry's flamboyant style. The atmosphere was one of inclusivity and celebration, with Harry as the ringmaster of joy. His catchphrase, "Treat people with kindness," evolved from a slogan into a movement, with fans carrying its message into their own lives. By the early 2020s, Harry Styles had crossed a threshold few artists achieve. He was no longer just a successful musician, he was a global cultural icon. His songs topped charts, his fashion made headlines, his words inspired movements. He wasn't defined by one direction anymore, nor was he just another pop star. He had carved out a space where music, fashion, and identity converged, and in doing so, he became a generational figure. And yet, what made Harry's rise so remarkable was the way he did it. There was no scandal, no desperate attempts for shock value, no formulaic reinvention. His evolution felt organic, natural, as though he was simply growing up in public and inviting the world along for the ride. Fine Line wasn't just an album. It was a turning point, the moment Harry Styles proved he could be more than a breakout soloist. It was the moment he became a cultural force, redefining what it meant to be a modern pop icon. But as the Fine Line era came to a close, one question lingered: could Harry build on this momentum, or had he already peaked? The answer would arrive with his next album, one that would not only cement his superstar status but push him into the stratosphere of modern music legends. By the time 2022 arrived, Harry Styles was already one of the biggest names in music. His second album, Fine Line, had cemented his status as both a critical darling and a commercial juggernaut. He had a Grammy, sold-out tours, and a cultural presence that extended far beyond music. But when Harry announced his third album, Harry's House, the stakes felt higher than ever. Fans and critics alike wondered, could he sustain this momentum, or would the pressure of global superstardom finally catch up to him? The answer came on May 20, 2022, when Harry's House dropped. From the opening notes of Music for a Sushi Restaurant, listeners knew they were in for something different. Gone were the heavy rock influences of his debut or the sprawling kaleidoscope of Fine Line. Instead, Harry leaned into warm synths, funky bass lines, and a deeply intimate atmosphere. The album was playful yet sophisticated, modern yet timeless. It wasn't about proving himself anymore. It was about comfort, joy, and living authentically, a reflection of Harry settling into himself. The lead single, as it was, instantly became a phenomenon. With its upbeat yet melancholic sound, the track captured the mood of a world emerging from the pandemic, nostalgic for the past yet uncertain about the future. The song wasn't just a hit, it was a global anthem. as it broke records on Spotify, topping charts in more than 30 countries, and eventually becoming the biggest song of Harry's career. It spent 15 consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, tying records and proving that Harry wasn't just maintaining his success, he was redefining it. But the album was more than its lead single. Tracks like Late Night Talking and Cinema showcased his playful side, while songs like Matilda and Little Freak revealed a gentler, more introspective Harry. Fans praised him for capturing the intimacy of personal storytelling while still delivering radio-friendly hits. Critics hailed Harry's House as his most cohesive and mature record yet, with Rolling Stone calling it an album of healing and joy. Commercially, the numbers were staggering. The album debuted at #1 in multiple countries, including the US and the UK, selling nearly 500,000 units in its first week in America alone. It would go on to sweep awards season, winning Album of the Year at both the Grammys and the Brit Awards. For Harry, it was the ultimate validation. Not only was he a pop superstar, but now he was recognized as one of the most important artists of his generation. Parallel to the album's success, Harry was dominating the live stage like never before. Love on Tour, which began in 2021 and extended through 2023, became one of the biggest concert tours in history. With more than 160 shows across multiple continents, the tour grossed nearly $600 million, making it one of the highest-grossing tours ever. But numbers alone don't capture what these shows meant. They became cultural gatherings, spaces of inclusivity and joy, where fans dressed in sequins, boars, and pastel suits, echoing Harry's aesthetic. His concerts weren't just about music, they were about community, about creating a safe space where treat people with kindness wasn't just a slogan but a lived reality. And then came Hollywood. While Harry had dipped his toes into acting before, 2022 marked his official crossover into cinema. He starred in Don't Worry Darling, directed by Olivia Wilde, and My Policeman, a period drama exploring themes of repression and forbidden love. The reception was mixed. Don't Worry Darling was plagued with behind-the-scenes controversies and lukewarm reviews, while My Policeman was quieter but emotionally resonant. Yet, despite the noise, one thing was clear: Harry was serious about acting. He wasn't just a musician moonlighting in film, he wanted to explore storytelling in every medium. The year also saw Harry's cultural influence reach unprecedented levels. Fashion continued to be central to his identity, with him gracing red carpets in bold, gender-fluid looks that challenged and expanded mainstream definitions of masculinity. His Gucci HAHAHA collaboration further solidified his place as a fashion powerhouse, blending vintage inspiration with playful modern twists. For fans and critics alike, Harry wasn't just following trends, he was setting them. But what truly elevated Harry to a new level of superstardom was how he resonated with people beyond the surface. In interviews and speeches, he consistently returned to themes of kindness, authenticity, and joy. His ability to balance humility with superstardom made him one of the most beloved figures in entertainment. In an era where celebrity scandals dominate headlines, Harry managed to remain largely free of controversy, allowing his art and personality to shine without distraction. By the end of 2022, it was undeniable: Harry Styles had achieved global domination. Harry's House wasn't just a hit album, it was a cultural moment. His tour wasn't just a series of concerts, it was a phenomenon. His fashion wasn't just clothing, it was a redefinition of gender and identity in mainstream culture. And his presence in film wasn't just an experiment, it was the beginning of a new chapter. For someone who started out as the floppy-haired heartthrob of One Direction, Harry's journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. With Harry's House, he proved that his evolution wasn't a fluke. He had become one of the defining artists of his generation, a cultural force whose influence extended far beyond music. And yet, the question that remained was simple: what comes next? Could Harry continue to reinvent himself, or had he already reached the pinnacle of modern stardom? As the world looked toward his next moves, one thing was certain: Harry Styles wasn't just living in Harry's house. He was building a legacy that would last for decades to come. When you step back and trace Harry Styles' journey, the arc is nothing short of remarkable. From his small-town beginnings in Holmes Chapel, Cheshire, to the dizzying heights of One Direction mania, to his current status as a global superstar, Harry's story isn't just about music or fame. It's about transformation, resilience, and the ability to carve out an identity in an industry that often tries to box artists into narrow roles. One of the most striking parts of Harry's legacy is how he managed to escape the boyband curse. History is littered with examples of young men who burned bright in groups only to fade when the spotlight shifted. For every Justin Timberlake who found solo success, there are countless others whose names are remembered only as footnotes of pop history. But Harry not only escaped that fate, he flipped the script. Instead of being remembered as the former One Direction member, he became a force of his own, an artist whose solo career eclipsed even the unprecedented success of the group. That alone secures him a place in the cultural canon. But his impact goes far beyond music charts. Fashion, for example, became one of his most potent tools of reinvention. At a time when masculinity in mainstream pop culture often felt rigid and confined, Harry challenged those boundaries. He wore pearl necklaces with tailored suits, painted his nails, and famously appeared on the cover of Vogue in a dress, the first man to grace the magazine's cover solo. For some, it was controversial, for many others, it was liberating. Harry didn't just wear clothes, he made statements. His style choices opened conversations about gender expression, identity, and the freedom to be oneself without apology. In doing so, he influenced not only fans but also younger artists who saw in him a model for self-expression unbound by tradition. Equally important is how Harry cultivated an image of kindness in an industry often driven by ego. His slogan, "Treat people with kindness," wasn't just a catchy lyric, it became a philosophy, embodied by his concerts and interactions with fans. Stories of Harry stopping his shows to help fans in distress, reading signs from the crowd, or simply treating people around him with respect flooded social media. In an era where celebrity scandals and arrogance often dominate headlines, Harry's reputation for empathy became part of his legend. His fans, known as Harrys, often describe his shows as safe spaces, celebrations of love, joy, and acceptance. That ability to build community is part of what elevates him from a pop star to a cultural icon. Musically, his impact is equally profound. Each of his 3 albums showcase not just growth, but versatility. From the rock-inspired debut to the sprawling pop of Fine Line to the intimacy of Harry's house, he refused to be boxed into one genre. His willingness to experiment and evolve mirrors the careers of legends like David Bowie, Elton John, and Prince, artists who constantly reinvented themselves while staying true to a core authenticity. For Harry, reinvention wasn't about abandoning his past, it was about integrating it into something new. That adaptability is one reason his career feels built for longevity, not just a moment. And then there's his influence on the younger generation of artists. From Billie Eilish to Conan Gray to Olivia Rodrigo, you can see echoes of Harry's aesthetic and ethos in their work, the blending of vulnerability with spectacle, the embrace of gender fluidity in fashion, the insistence on creative authenticity. Harry didn't just succeed for himself, he helped open doors for others to walk through. His path showed that you could be commercially successful without compromising artistic vision, and that you could be a megastar without shedding your humanity. Of course, legacy also lives in the way fans carry an artist's work. For millennials who grew up with One Direction, Harry represents nostalgia fused with pride, a reminder of their own adolescence and a proof that you can grow beyond the boxes people place you in. For Gen Z, he is a symbol of modern identity, someone who refuses labels, embraces joy, and challenges outdated norms. Few artists manage to speak meaningfully across generations, but Harry Styles does. There's also the question of his crossover into Hollywood. While his acting career is still in its early stages, the mere fact that directors and studios see him as more than a musician speaks to his multifaceted influence. Whether his acting legacy becomes as significant as his music remains to be seen, but his willingness to take risks, from leading roles in Don't Worry Darling to smaller, heartfelt performances in My Policeman, shows his commitment to growth as a storyteller in every medium. And then we must consider the cultural phenomenon of Harry as the internet sweetheart. meme culture immortalized him in ways charts and awards never could. From his playful banter in interviews to the viral moments at concerts, Harry became a constant presence in online spaces. His fans didn't just consume his music, they lived in his universe, sharing clips, outfits, and quotes that extended his reach far beyond traditional media. In a digital age, that kind of cultural footprint is as significant as record sales. But perhaps the most enduring part of Harry's legacy is the simplicity of his message. Amid the chaos of fame, the politics of the industry, and the shifting tides of public opinion, Harry's story is grounded in something timeless: kindness, authenticity, and joy. His life demonstrates that you don't need to conform to stereotypes or chase controversy to remain relevant. Instead, you can build a career and a legacy on the foundation of being true to yourself and inspiring others to do the same. So, what is Harry Styles' legacy today? He is not just a former boy band member who got lucky. He is not just a pop star with a string of hits. He is a cultural chameleon, a fashion disruptor, a community builder, and a global icon who turned vulnerability into strength. His journey is not about escaping one direction, it's about transcending it, proving that the story of Harry Styles is one of evolution without losing essence. As his career continues to unfold, the enduring question is not whether he'll remain relevant, that's already clear. The real question is how far his influence will reach, and how many more lives he'll touch, both through his art and his example. For now, one truth remains: Harry Styles didn't just build Harry's house, he built a legacy that will stand the test of time.